Hello guys, and welcome back to another cold episode. The Forbidden and Limited list was updated for Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel, and I've actually already recorded this episode, or this video, twice, and both times I wasn't recording my audio on my microphone. Somehow I made that mistake twice. Anyway, so I already know what's on here, but there is a lot to talk about, and yeah, let's just hop into this. First of all, what I expected to be hit was the Ishizu cards and Sprite. Sprite was the best deck prior to tier, and it was the second best deck during tier, so I did expect that to be limited or hit in some regard. And then the second thing is the Ishizu cards. I don't expect tier to be on here at all, but I do expect the Ishizu cards. They've kind of overstayed their welcome. In fact, they shouldn't have ever been printed, but alas, here we are. So let's hop into the game, or into the list, and starting off with cards to be forbidden. All of these are great. Let me explain. Starting off with Cyberstein, we all know this card. We all hate this card. This card is terrible. Let's be honest. This card has never been healthy. It never is in healthy game states, and it always is a bad time. It always just has this, like, not jank, but, like, really annoying way to just, like, end a board with either, like, Exterio or Warrior from another planet or something like that, where it's just like this fusion monster stops you from playing the game in some regard, or it's used in some jank FTK, which is really, really annoying, and it's just never healthy. Hate this card. Definitely deserves to be banned. It was so unhealthy that it's even banned in Duel Links, so there you go. You know something is bad when it's banned in Duel Links. Next up, we have Smoke Grenade of the Thief. Smoke Grenade is a poorly designed card. It has the ability to rip multiple cards out of your hand, and it's just not very fun to deal with, because you do get to look at the opponent's hand, right? As opposed to something like Delinquent Duo, Smoke Grenade being able to look at your hand is very, very important. And, I mean, we just saw in the TCG ban list, a pointer of the Red Lotus get banned for similar reasons. So Smoke Grenade getting banned absolutely makes sense here, and should have been banned a while ago. Yeah, it's still a very problematic card. However, on top of that, Smoke Grenade of the Thief has the ability to be used multiple times. So you would go like Smoke Grenade, look at your opponent's hand, and then you could potentially bring it back and pop it, and then look at your opponent's hand again, ripping 2 cards out of their hand, which is very, very strong, and definitely not fun. So there you go. As opposed to something like Triple Attack, which does require your opponent to actually do something for you to then be able to, like, counteract that, basically. So your opponent stops you or interacts with you in some regard, and then you go, okay, now I can look at your hand. So there you go. That's why Triple Attack isn't on this list. And then we have Terraforming. Terraforming is really, really strong. It's basically just an extra copy of any of your field spells, and with field spells being so powerful as of now, as well as in the future with things like the Pressure Planet, as well as other such field spells with the Visa Starfrost lore, it's going to be even more powerful. And Terraforming has just become a sacky card, where it's like, oh, I see Terraforming, therefore I see full combo, and I get to just kind of play the game off of this one individual card, just due to how powerful each of the field spells are. And then that also means that limiting the field spells means that they're still getting that extra copy of that field spell through Terraforming. So there's that. I do like this hit, but this kind of falls in line with other such sacky one-ofs that I would also like to see hit. Things like the Foolish Burial, Rhoda, Monster Reborn. These things that are just like, they're basically only on there because of their legacy and not necessarily because they are good or healthy for the game. Like, every time you see Foolish Burial, how often is it not just a free full combo, right? Like, very rarely is that the case that it's not, right? Similarly with Rhoda, similarly with, well, not so much with Monster Reborn, but Monster Reborn is kind of a sacky one-of, similar to a lot of the sacky one-ofs like Harpy's Feather Duster, etc. So, happy to see at least one of them hit. Moving on to the limited list, we have all of the Ishizu cards except for Kelbeck. This is a little bit disappointing. I would have loved to have seen Kelbeck, but obviously they're not going to limit 2 URs. That's just not going to happen, especially when they're also banning Cyberstein and Terraforming and Smoke Grenade, which are all URs, so heaven forbid. But yeah, all things considered, these are great limitations. Yeah, I would have liked, again, to have seen the Kelbeck on here. I would have liked to have seen all of these in this section up here with the Forbidden List, because honestly, all of the Ishizu cards are very problematic and basically make you the master of the graveyard, which is really, really frustrating when so many decks basically use the graveyard as a second hand. So, or just interact with the graveyard in general. I mean, Sprite doesn't necessarily interact with the graveyard a ton, but it still does to some regard with things like Swap Frog, with things like Elf. So even something like Sprite that can play, you know, without the graveyard, still does kind of lose to the Keldo and Mudora. As for the millers, if you're not interacting with the graveyard, all of a sudden, these things are a death sentence, because now you're milling half of your deck, and you don't really have anything to gain off of it. Like, for example, if you're playing Flu, and all of a sudden, they go Agido Kelbeck, you're just out of the game, basically, especially if the mills are bad for you. And all of a sudden, now you can't get a search off of something like an Eglen, and now you're just kind of stuck. You're not really able to do anything. So this is where I'm not a big fan of these cards, and why I don't like them, but all things considered, these are great limitations, and I do like seeing these hit as opposed to the actual tier cards. I don't think the tier cards are as big of a problem as the Ishizu cards are. We even saw prior to tier being released that the best deck was like branded Ishizu 60 card stuff, and it was because of the Ishizu cards. The previous best deck was Sprite, and then all of a sudden it was branded because of the Ishizu cards. So there you go. Glad to see all of these limited. As for the semi-limits, Sprite Blue. This is what I expected. This is what I wanted, kind of. Some limitation to Sprite. I would have also preferred one more limitation, that being blue, or not blue, Elf. Elf would have been great as a limitation, just putting that to 1 so that we can't go into that multiple times. You still need access to Elf, sadly, if you want Sprite to be playable before we have Sprind. You can ban Elf. I do think it is a ban-worthy card, but we do need Sprind before that actually happens, otherwise Sprite just dies. And a whole bunch of other decks just like lose a whole bunch, and it's just not really as fun. But honestly, yeah, Sprite Blue being semi-limited, I kind of expected this. This is the second best deck. It was the best deck prior to the Ishizu cards, prior to the tier cards. It was just a very good deck in general. So seeing this limitation is fine. It's honestly not all that much. It's just a like consistency hit, but you can't really hit anything with like the end board of Sprite. Like, you're not going to hit and ban like Red or Carrot or something like that. That's just not really worth it, and limiting it isn't going to do much. So yeah, this is the best limitation. I actually would have preferred Jet to 1. I think that would have been a better limitation. But I also hate the semi-limited list, so there you go. But yeah, all things considered, I do think that this is a good hit. It's a step in the right direction, kind of bringing Sprite into line with all of the other decks. So there you go. All of these I'm going to talk about in a second, the buffs, but I do really want to quickly talk about the fact that tier is still best deck. It's pretty much going to be the best deck for a while, I would imagine. But this does mean that it is no longer tier 0 and not even close to tier 0, I would say. While it is the best deck, I do think that there are a lot of decks that can compete with it. Branded, even without tier, is able to compete. I would think that Sword Soul is able to compete. Sprite, Flu, mostly those. I think Adamantipator is still very playable. Things like Dragon Link are probably going to get a boost here. Yeah, there are a lot of things that are going to be more in line with that power level now with the limitations to the Ishizu cards. I do think that that tier is probably going to be far and away the best deck, but I do think more things will be able to compete and will make it a lot more interesting than that tier 0. Because we already had the limitations to things like Havnish and Shirin and all of that stuff. Yeah, that's why I'm expecting this. Moving on to the buffs, we have Girsu the Orcus Mech Knight. Girsu is great. This is a great hit, or unhit, because the Orcus combo isn't really enough anymore. Ending on something like Ding Girsu or like the ability to go into Ding Girsu, or like special summon Ding Girsu, while also having a counter trap Omni Negate, just kind of isn't enough anymore. Like, you do need more than that for your combo to really stop people. So having Orcus be able to go full combo kind of doesn't matter anymore. Just isn't enough. So there's that. And also Maxi. Maxi exists still. It's still not on this list, but I didn't expect that. Next up, we have Nadir Servant. This could go to 3. Should have been at 3 like ages ago. This card isn't doing anything. So there you go. Metaverse. Sure. The difference between metaverse and terraforming is the simple fact that metaverse is a trap. That's it. Being able to get a field spell on the opponent's turn doesn't matter nearly as much when things like Mystic Mine are banned, so that doesn't really matter. Yeah, sure, you could get like Necro Valley. That's kind of the only thing that metaverse is really good for. You could also potentially get another one of your field spells, like for example, the only thing I could see this being used in hilariously is War Rocks. You go like War Rock Mountain to protect one of your monsters from battle. That's basically it. That's all I could see. Hilarious, right? And then Cyber Angel Ben 10. I'm honestly not a fan of Ben 10 being at more than one, just due to the fact that Ben 10 is a poorly worded card. So you basically get access to it multiple times, meaning that you can get multiple searches, and with the ability to also cycle or recycle the ritual monsters. I'm not a big fan of this one. But I think it's fine. I mean, Drytron's probably realistically not going to do anything with multiple Ben 10. You could probably put Ben 10 to 3, put Ava to 3, put all of that stuff to 3. It's not going to matter. Drytron will be a deck that exists and will sometimes win the game just automatically because your opponent isn't prepared or something like that, or doesn't hit the right card or what have you. But honestly, it doesn't really matter. I still think Drytron is just not able to really keep up with the modern metagame. So there's that. But I still don't like the Ben 10 Unlimit. Anyway, that's basically it. This is a good ban list. Master Duel has some of the best ban lists when it comes to actually addressing issues, and since they do tend to be smaller in size, except around the big events like the Duelist Cup and the WCQs, we tend to see some smaller shakeups that ultimately don't do a whole bunch to change the meta, but we do get those rolled out pretty consistently, which is better than what we just got in the TCG. So all in all, this is a nice ban list. I do like it. It solves a lot of the issues without killing anything in particular. Hitting things like Cyberstein, the terraforming, the Ishizu cards, all of that is fantastic. So there you go. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope that you guys did indeed enjoy. If you did, I like us very much, so appreciate it. And if you want to check out more content like this, as well as more Yu-Gi-Oh, then just be sure to subscribe. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching, and remember to always stay frosty. Bye-bye. Shout out to the Frost Guard, my members. Thank you guys so much for the support, and I hope you enjoy the content.